Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Coffee Chat with Matt. I'm standing here at Wasco Nursery and Garden Center on an absolutely picture-perfect Saturday morning. I thought I would bring to you just a list in no particular order of trees that I love for fall color. This year we had a couple of tornadoes rip through the area. We have pear trees that are dying from fire blight, which, again, if you've ever heard me talk, I'm basically thankful for. We've got just some older trees that are just dying. They're kind of at the end of their life expectancy around here. Some big old Norway maples and red maples and things that were planted in the 80s are just kind of living out their life expectancy in a subdivision. Not necessarily in the wild, but in a subdivision, trees have a shorter life expectancy, things like that. And so we have a lot of customers who are asking about tree planting. And so I thought I'd bring to you a nice list of fall coloring trees. So I'm standing right here in the maples, and I wanted to show you this one here because it's one that a lot of people aren't necessarily familiar with, and it's really one of my favorites, and actually one of the easiest to grow trees that you can plant just about anywhere. As long as it's not soupy or swampy, you could probably plant this tree. It's called a Miyabe maple. This particular one is called State Street. One of the things I'd like to point out is we're here in, I guess you could call it middle of September, and that leaf looks fantastic. There's no brown spots on it. There's no tattered edges. It's not looking stressed out. And this tree is above ground. It's in a root ball, sitting in the garden center here. And yes, we obviously do our best to keep our trees happy and healthy and things like that. But by the time you get to middle of September, there's a lot of trees that are already starting to show fall color. Some of the leaves are tattered and brown and little things like that, which is normal for most of those trees. But State Street maple just looks fantastic all season long until it turns brilliant golden yellow in the fall. I also love the bark that this tree has. It's got a nice sort of coarse, corky bark, which is just different from most maples, which have a smooth, thin bark. So I love the State Street maple. It's about 30 to 35 tall and wide is a good landscape size for it. Right behind us, I've got a couple of Freemanii Maples. So I'm going to lump all the Freemanii Maples together into one category. A Freemanii maple is a cross between a red maple and a silver maple. And when you cross them, you basically get the best of both worlds. You get the growth rate and the soil and water adaptability out of the silver maple. You get the stronger branching structure and the nicer fall color out of the red maple. And when you combine them, you get things like autumn blaze and marmo and firefall and some of those. And they have brilliant red fall color. They're very fast growing. If you're looking for quick shade and just an adaptable tree, one that you can just plant and, if you live in a new subdivision that just, the ground is really poor quality, this tree will do great. It'll love that, actually, and it'll do just fine. So the marmo, firefall, autumn blaze, all of those are going to be great trees. And then there is a really nice red maple called Red Point. All of those, if you're looking for that bright red fall color, check those trees out. As we continue on, I wanted to talk about a tree called bald cypress, and it's one that people don't commonly think of when they think of fall color, but I think bald cypress has a fantastic fall color. So bald cypress is actually a deciduous conifer. So it's a cone-bearing plant like a pine or a spruce, but it's deciduous. It drops its leaves in the wintertime or in the fall like a maple or an oak or anything else. So this bald cypress right here happens to be a variety called Shawnee Brave, but they all have about the same fall color. Shawnee Brave just tends to be more upright than the regular variety of bald cypress. They are native in Illinois, not so much in northern Illinois, but in southern Illinois they're native. Extremely hardy, extremely durable, very long-lived, exceptionally water tolerant. If you have an area in your yard that tends to flood in the springtime, or you back up to maybe a retention pond, or you have a creek or something like that, would be a great tree back there. But also normal, average soils are perfectly fine for it. But it's got this really fine, ferny, almost feathery-like foliage in here. And that's going to turn sort of, I'm going to call it a rusty pink. It's an orangey, pinky type color in the fall, but I think it has really pretty fall color. It's got beautiful sort of peeling bark as the tree grows and matures. Shawnee Brave is going to get, in the landscape around here, about 40 tall and about 15-ish wide. The regular bald cypress, which are just kind of right across from us here, what we would just call the species bald cypress, those, again, in the landscape, you're going to see about 40 to 50 tall, maybe 20 to 30 wide. Now, here's one of those things that I'll caution you about. If you look up bald cypress online, you're going to see pictures from, some cypress swamps down in Louisiana or whatever. Bald cypress are extremely long-lived trees, and in their native habitat in the southern swamps, they can live for 200 or 300 years. They can get several hundred feet tall. I mean, they can be massive, massive trees. That is not going to happen in your yard. First of all, the tree is not going to live long enough for that to happen because trees just don't live that long when you take them out of their natural environment. So when you take them out of the swamp and put them into the subdivision, the life expectancy is usually cut in half, if not more. The other thing is, it's not living in a swamp. It's living in a heavier clay soil. It'll do perfectly fine. It's just not going to get quite as large as it would in its native environment. And that's true of most trees. There are Norway spruce can get a couple 100 feet tall. Again, not in the landscape around here. It's just not going to happen. So we try very hard on our website to list reasonable landscape sizes in our area. We're not perfect about that, but we've done a really good job of trying to fine-tune it. So if you're wondering about how big a certain tree is going to get, check out our website or some other local resource. Another tree that you may be unfamiliar with is a tree called a tupelo or a black gum. It's another Illinois native. We do have a handful of them around here. I do know of a native stand of tupelos around here, but it's typically a little more southern tree, southern Illinois or central Illinois. But I love tupelos for their fall color. In fact, I think it's probably our best fall coloring tree in the nursery here. So there's a nice little group of them over here. One of the things that you'll notice about the leaves is that they're nice and glossy. Again, kind of keeping a nice, healthy appearance this late in the summer. The other thing is that they'll start fall coloring, and they're going to start with a little bit of red along the edges, and then eventually just go flame red with hints of yellow in there. A lot of times it almost looks like the tree is glowing because you get this kind of yellowy towards the center and then this bright red on the exterior. Really, really pretty tree. I have one at home in the front yard. It's very young. I just planted it last year. Really looking forward to seeing that one get some fall color this year. But I really like the tupelos a lot. They're also a small tree. They're only going to get about 20 to 25 feet tall around here. So really nice, near a house, near a patio. They're relatively clean. They do not love to dry out. They don't necessarily need a wet location, but they're not going to love a really stressful, dry situation. A parkway is probably not going to be wonderful for a tupelo. But, your backyard or even in your front yard away from the street a little bit, near the house, near a patio deck, something like that, would be a really nice spot for them. Right across the aisle over here, we have some elm trees. And elms aren't often known for nice fall color, but there's a really nice one called Frontier Elm. And you may have heard me talk about it before because we have a really lovely one planted in our parking lot. It's actually in a parking lot island, and the tree's only, I think we're just about at 7 years. And it's taller than the parking lot light, which I think is 30 feet. I'm not positive about that, but it's taller than the parking lot light. It's a beautiful shade tree. So if you're looking for quick shade, I don't know that there's a better tree than Frontier Elm. It is exceptionally fast growing. And aside from raising a few of the lower branches so that cars don't, hit the branching and things like that, we have done absolutely nothing to this tree to shape it. And you can come check it out. It's gorgeous. But the fall color is a really nice sort of purpley color, burgundy purple type color. So this is Frontier Elm right here. It has a relatively small leaf. It is not uncommon at all for some various insects to munch on the leaves and create little holes in there. We don't do anything about that. It's totally harmless to the tree. There's a lot of little insects that like to munch on elm leaves, and on a smaller tree in the garden center here, you may notice it a little bit more, but on a tree in the landscape, you'll never notice it. You just let it go and let it do its thing. It does really, really well. And you can literally plant this in just garbage soil. It will do perfectly fine. It'll grow just about anywhere and is extremely fast growing. So really nice tree. That's the Frontier Elm. Oaks are a tree that maybe aren't necessarily known for great fall color, but some of them, like the Hills Oak, actually have wonderful fall color. Hills Oak is going to turn a really nice red color. It's also known as a northern pin oak. So if you're familiar with pin oak, they were planted pretty widely in the 80s and 90s around here, and then people started realizing that they have a nutrient deficiency problem. Our soils tend to be very alkaline here, and so when you plant a regular pin oak in our alkaline soils, you tend to have a lot of iron chlorosis, so yellowy leaves, just unhealthy appearance, things like that. The Hills oak, though, is a northern pin oak and a completely different species of tree, and it does not have all of the same nutrient deficiency problems and tends to do really well in our soils here. Bright, purpley red, crimson red fall color, and fast growth rate. Again, if you've heard any of my talks before, I always say, oaks get a bad rap for being slow growing, which is true, and Hills oak is probably one of the faster growing oak trees out there. If it's happy and healthy and established, it can average 2+ feet a year. So really nice tree. Keeps a pyramidal shape to it. So average size for a Hills oak is going to be about 40 tall and about 25, maybe 30 wide, but narrow at the top, tapering down towards the bottom. Small acorn. So one of the things about oaks is they will produce acorns, but typically it's going to be later on in life. You're not going to see a ton of acorns on a young oak tree. And when I say young, I'm talking, the first 20-ish years of the tree's life. You might see some. As they get older, they will produce more. I have 3 very large, very well-established pin oaks, regular pin oak at home that the previous homeowner planted. Fortunately, all 3 of them are doing really well and are healthy. And we get a ton of acorns. They're small acorns, are about this big. The squirrels love them, and the blue jays absolutely love them, along with a lot of other wildlife. So it doesn't bother me one bit, but if it was raining down, like right on top of my house or right on the patio, might be a little more of an issue. But out in the yard, I absolutely love it. So that's Hills oak or northern pin oak. Another tree that maybe we don't often think about for fall color would be crabapples. Of course, everybody knows crabapples because of the beautiful spring flowers. But there are a couple of crabapples that actually have really nice fall color. One of those is called golden raindrops, and it's one of the best crabapples for our area. It's very hardy, it's very disease resistant, and it has kind of a cool leaf. It's almost what I call like a trident-shaped leaf, so that the leaves have a couple of lobes coming out at the side and then sort of a point down the middle. It's going to be green leaves, white spring flowers, and then a golden fruit in the fall and winter, which is really cool. It's not a very messy tree at all. The fruit will typically get eaten by the birds very late in the year, so it's not the type of crabapple that drops a lot. And then the fall color is going to be somewhere from an orangey to a purpley color, and it's usually quite nice. And this is golden raindrops right here. Pick off a leaf and kind of open that up. You can see that leaf shape. So it's got kind of a cool texture, almost little, it's not quite toothed edges, but sort of toothed edges. Very resistant to apple scab, which is the predominant disease that we have around here that affects crabapples. We do not spray these trees in the garden center, so you're looking at this tree right here, and it is still fully leafed out here in, middle of September, looking fantastic. The fruit is still green right now. One of the things that I like to talk about with crabapples is what's called persistent fruit. So golden raindrops is a small fruit and a persistent fruit. So persistent meaning it's going to stick around a while. And right now this fruit is like rock hard. So I have an old crabapple at home that has been dropping for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and it has crabapples that are about this big, and they're rotting all over the backyard, and there's wasps and yellow jackets and all that kind of stuff attracted to it. And it's a beautiful tree, and I'm not going to cut it down, but I definitely wish that I had a persistent fruiting crabapple instead of one of these that's dropping like it is. So this fruit, which is green and rock hard right now, is going to start to turn yellow the later we get into the fall. The yellow fruit will remain on basically all winter. The birds will start to pick it off when it really softens up, which is usually like March-ish time frame, something like that. What the birds don't eat off typically just dehydrates and falls off, looks like a dehydrated pea, basically. So there's really no rotten fruit. There's no mess to clean up. The little dried fruit can just land in the mulch, or it can get mowed up, and it does not create a mess at all. So I really like golden raindrops. It's typically about 20-ish feet wide and 15 to 20 tall, sometimes just a little bit wider than it is tall. We also have a really beautiful golden raindrops planted here at the garden center behind the building near one of our little koi ponds. So kind of cool tree right there, and definitely worth checking out because it's a really pretty tree, especially if you've had bad luck with some of the old-fashioned crabapples, because this is a really nice introduction. We've been growing it for 20-something years now. Really proven itself to be a great tree around here. This particular tree looks kind of like a large shrub basically right now, but it's really a small tree. It's called a serviceberry, and this one is called Autumn Brilliance. So, as the name suggests, this tree looks absolutely fantastic in the fall, but that's not necessarily even the best thing about it. This tree is going to be covered with white flowers in the springtime, usually in late April. So just absolutely covered with white flowers, and then kind of a nice blue-green leaf color during the summer months. The flowers will be followed by a small fruit. That's the serviceberry, also known as a Juneberry. And that fruit is edible. It's edible for people, and it's edible for birds. If you eat it, great. If you don't, the birds will eat it off, and rarely do you have much of a mess or anything like that because of a serviceberry. I love to see the cedar waxwings in particular absolutely love to eat serviceberry, so they're a fun bird to watch. Robins love it, and it's just a really great tree all around. So you're getting the spring flowers, the summer fruit, beautiful yellow, orange, red fall color. And then the other nice thing about it is the bark, actually. So in the wintertime, you can see the bark better when the leaves are off the tree. And the branches almost take on sort of a striated, like slightly muscular type look to them. Really cool tree. If you have any landscape lighting, I'd love to uplight serviceberry. I think they have a lot of character. Very easy to grow, native tree, hardy way up into Canada and stuff. So really good tree. These are grown multi-stem typically, but we do grow them in a single trunk form as well. There's a few here. This one's kind of leaning over, but there's a few right behind me here with that single trunk. So it's kind of more of your typical tree look versus the multi-stem look. But they both are great. They both do all of the same things: the flowers, the fruit, the fall color, the nice bark. So really an excellent tree. The last one that I wanted to talk about is right over here. And it's a hybrid maple. It's a Japanese-Korean hybrid. It was developed by Professor Ed Hasselkiss up at University of Wisconsin-Madison. So really great breeding program up there, trying to make Japanese maples hardier. This particular cross is part of the Jack Frost collection, and it's called Northwind, and it's absolutely one of my favorites. So this is all Northwind here. We have some other ones up in the middle, but the new growth on this tree in the springtime, the whole tree is going to come out sort of a raspberry, kind of pinkish red color. So in the spring, the whole tree is that color. It's gorgeous. Then the leaves are going to turn green as they mature. But throughout the summer months, the new growth is going to have sort of a raspberry-colored new growth tips all throughout the summer months, which is just as lovely. And then as you get into fall, now it's a little later fall coloring tree, that's when the real show is going to start. Typically, you're in mid to late October, you're going to start to get some yellowing going through the center, and then the tips and exterior of the tree are going to start to turn various shades of pink and red and burgundy. We have a beautiful one at home that just every year, it's kind of interesting because every year the fall color, it's like a different show. Some years it's been predominantly yellow with hints of purple and pink all throughout. Some years it's been like much darker red, and there's all sorts of, theories about that. I don't think we necessarily fully understand fall coloring in trees. Of course, we know a lot about it. There's all sorts of things that, the amount of moisture that a tree got throughout the season, the number of cloudy days versus sunny days that year, temperature swings, all of those kind of things can affect the fall color in a tree. And that's why every year is different and every tree is different. Typically in a drier year, which, so far this would probably be counted as a drier year. Typically in a drier year, fall color starts a little bit earlier and maybe doesn't last quite as long. If trees are getting adequate moisture, or if we've had a good rainy season, fall color tends to start a little bit later, and the fall color season tends to be stretched out a little bit. So rather than just turning red and dropping, sometimes they start that yellow to orange to red and things like that. So, but the Northwind maple is a nice small tree, 15, maybe 20, maybe 25 feet tall eventually, but tough as nails. We don't warranty Japanese maples. We never have. They're very touchy here in northern Illinois. But the Korean hybrid maples, like Northwind and any of the Jack Frost collection, we have a normal tree warranty, which is 1 year if our clients plant it, and 3 years if our crews plant it. So they have the same warranty that all of our other trees have. I've got one at home. It's on the, I guess, northeast corner of the house, but it sticks out away from the house on the north side. It's not really protected by anything, and it's gone through several polar vortex winters. I've actually transplanted it from one house to the next when we were moving 7 years back. I had it at my previous house. I dug it up. I brought it to the garden center here to care for it for a month when we were in between houses, and planted it at the new house. It's done great. So really a very proven tree. The Northwind maple was trialed out at the Bickelhaupt Arboretum, which is out in Clinton, Iowa, which is kind of right out near the river and tends to be about 3 to 4 degrees colder than we are in the wintertime. So, when we're at, 20 below, they're at 24, 25, something like that, which makes a huge difference. But that's where the tree was trialed, and it has performed excellently out there. So really great tree if you're a little gun shy on Japanese maples, things like that. I totally understand that because a lot of people have had severe winter damage on Japanese maples, but this Korean-Japanese hybrid is fantastic. There's several other trees in that collection. There's a dwarf, like weeping-style lace leaf maple, part of the Jack Frost collection. It's called Ice Dragon. I also have that at home, and that has performed exceptionally well. Even came back from some rodent damage. I think mice, but I'm not entirely sure. Chewed a whole bunch of bark off of it. Has a big wound on there. Thought that was going to kill the tree. It actually just healed up, grew around it, has grown, pretty quickly and looks really quite nice. But if you like a smaller, kind of more lacy leaf tree, the Ice Dragon is a really good one. And again, that has proven itself to be exceptionally hardy. So some really cool trees. Of course, there's a ton of other options for fall color. I didn't talk about shagbark hickory. I didn't talk about nannyberry viburnum or paperbark maple. I mean, there's a ton of great fall coloring trees. And as I mentioned, fall is just an exceptional time for tree planting. So I hope you get a chance to get outside this weekend and maybe come visit the garden center. Thanks for watching.